The baby photo I held that night wasn't of some neighbor's kid. It was the only evidence of a secret buried for 18 years, enough to burn down the entire Whitaker family and a hospital charity fund. He attacked me thinking I was digging up old wounds, but Don had no idea. That very frame would expose the $2.4 million sitting in his shadow accounts. That night had blood, cameras, witnesses, and a charity auction where I'd open a sealed envelope and read aloud the words that would freeze the entire ballroom in silence. My name is Lauren Hayes, and I've spent the last decade watching the Whitaker family perfect their performance of charitable nobility. At 33, I coordinate risk control for Arkvale Children's Health in Caldera Springs, Redwood, a position that grants me uncomfortable proximity to my stepfather's empire of goodwill. Don Whitaker presides over the Whitaker for Little Hearts Foundation like a benevolent king, his silver hair and practiced smile gracing every hospital newsletter. My mother, Marjorie, plays the devoted wife with Oscar-worthy commitment, her manicured hands always clasped just so during photo ops. Then there's Bryce, my half-brother, who inherited Don's jawline and his talent for selective blindness. And me? I'm the difficult daughter who asks too many questions about procurement processes and audit trails. The foundation's storage facility smelled of cardboard and tax deductions that Tuesday afternoon. I was cataloging donations for the upcoming gala. Crystal vases, signed memorabilia, the usual trophies of wealth-seeking absolution. My fingers traced along a dusty shelf when they found it. A simple silver frame, tarnished at the corners, holding a newborn's photo. No name, no date, just a baby with closed eyes and a distinctive birthmark near the left ear. I almost placed it in the miscellaneous pile, but something made me turn it over. A faded label clung to the backing. Arch 2007 or 1147. My breath caught. That wasn't a donation code. It was an internal file reference from Arkvale's old system. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as I photographed the code with my phone. In my line of work, patterns matter, anomalies matter more, and finding hospital documentation mixed with charity items, that was an anomaly worth investigating. "Lauren, you done in there?" Don's voice boomed from the doorway, making me fumble the frame. "Your mother needs help with the seating charts." I slipped my phone into my pocket and turned, holding the frame. "Almost finished. Hey, do you know anything about this?" His expression shifted faster than a heart monitor flatline. "Put that down." "It's just a baby photo. Probably got mixed in with—" I said put it down. His tone carried that particular weight I'd learned to recognize, the kind that preceded locked doors and hushed conversations. I set the frame carefully on the shelf, watching his shoulders relax fractionally. "Sure, no problem." But problems, I'd learned, often hide behind the things people don't want you to touch. That evening, I sat in my apartment with my laptop, the photographed code glowing on my phone screen. The Arkvale system required legitimate access. Fortunately, risk control meant I had clearance for historical records. My fingers flew across the keyboard, navigating through digital archives that smelled of old secrets even through the screen. Arch 2007 or 1147. The file bloomed open like a wound. Most fields were redacted or corrupted, but fragments remained. NICU admission, emergency cesarean, complications requiring extended care, charitable fund allocation for extraordinary circumstances. My coffee grew cold as I cross-referenced the case number with financial records. There, a series of transactions from late 2007 all authorized by the same signature, Donald M. Whitaker, directing $180,000 in supplementary aid disbursements to an account under the name Alyssa Hart. I knew that name. She'd been a NICU coordinator who'd left Arkvale abruptly in early 2008, the kind of departure that came with signed NDAs and no forwarding address. The birthmark in the photo nagged at me. I'd seen it before. That small port wine stain shaped like a crescent moon during last year's foundation golf tournament. When Don had rolled up his sleeves in the August heat, the same mark had peeked out from beneath his collar, just below his left ear. Coincidence, maybe. But in my experience, when money moves in shadows and photos hide in storage rooms, Coincidence is just another word for connection. I closed my laptop and stared at the city lights bleeding through my window. Tomorrow, I'd dig deeper. Tonight, I'd add another lock to my door and back up my files to 3 different clouds. Because Don Whitaker had taught me many things over the years, but the most important lesson was this. The families that smile brightest in public often cast the darkest shadows in private, and shadows, I was learning, had a way of hiding $180,000 secrets. The numbers spoke louder than any confession. Over the next 3 weeks, I excavated financial records with the patience of an archaeologist, each discovery adding weight to my growing suspicion. My legitimate access to Arkvale's systems meant I could dig without raising flags, as long as I was careful. The $180,000 wasn't a single payment. It came in 5 installments between October 2007 and January 2008, each labeled with increasingly creative descriptions. Extended care support, administrative reconciliation, special circumstances allocation, the kind of language that sounds official enough to pass casual scrutiny, but vague enough to hide anything. I tracked down Alyssa Hart's banking records through a contact at the county clerk's office. Public information, all perfectly legal. The deposits matched Don's disbursements down to the cent, but Alyssa hadn't kept the money long. Within days of each deposit, she'd withdrawn everything in cash. Hush money. The realization settled in my stomach like cold cement. My breakthrough came on a Thursday night. Eyes burning from screen glare, buried in the 2007 NICU admission logs. I found a gap, a 3-day period where bed 14 showed as occupied but had no corresponding patient file. The metadata showed the original entry had been modified by a system administrator on October 15, 2007 at 11:47 p.m. I pulled up the Foundation's board meeting minutes from that week. Don had missed the October 16th meeting due to a family emergency. The same night, someone had scrubbed a baby from existence in the hospital's database. The photo haunted me. I'd made copies, studying that tiny face with its distinctive birthmark, during a family dinner at the Whitaker estate. I watched Don absently rub the spot below his left ear while lecturing Bryce about responsibility. The gesture was unconscious, habitual, the way people touch old scars or tattoos. "You're awfully quiet tonight, Lauren," my mother observed, her voice sharp with suspicion disguised as concern. "Just thinking about work," I replied, cutting my salmon with unnecessary precision. Don's fork paused midway to his mouth. "That risk control position keeping you busy?" "You could say that. Amazing what turns up in old files sometimes." The temperature at the table dropped 10 degrees. Bryce, oblivious as always, launched into a story about his fraternity's charity car wash, but Don's eyes never left my face. After dinner, I helped clear plates, following my mother into her pristine kitchen. She arranged dishes in the dishwasher with military precision, each fork and knife in its designated slot. "Whatever you think you're doing," she said quietly, "stop." I handed her a wineglass. "I don't know what you mean. Don has been good to us, to you, that job, your apartment, the loan forgiveness for your student debt. All from the kindness of his heart?" She turned on me then, her carefully composed face cracking just enough to show the fear underneath. "From the stability he's provided. Don't be the ungrateful child who burns down the house because she doesn't like the color of the walls." But I wasn't looking at paint choices. I was looking at a foundation built on a $180,000 lie. That weekend, I drove to Westbridge, a town 2 hours north where Alyssa Hart had reportedly moved. Property records led me to a modest duplex with a well-maintained garden. The woman who answered the door had aged a decade in the 8 years since her ID photo. Stress has a way of rewriting faces. "I can't talk to you," she said immediately, recognizing something in my approach. "My question's about Arkvale." "I'm not here officially. This is about a baby from 2007, October, NICU bed 14. Her hand gripped the door frame. "I don't know what you're talking about." "I think you do. I think $180,000 says you do." We stared at each other across her threshold. 2 women caught in the web of someone else's secrets. Finally, she stepped aside. Her living room was careful, neutral, the kind of space designed not to reveal too much. She didn't offer coffee. "I never hurt anyone," she said. "Especially not that baby. He was perfect, healthy despite the dramatic entrance. The mother was young, scared, hemorrhaging. She didn't make it." My pulse hammered. "And the father?" Alyssa's laugh was bitter. "The father was very concerned about his reputation, his marriage, his foundation's image. He needed the birth record to disappear, needed the baby to become someone else's problem, someone else's son." "Whose son?" She shook her head. "I modified the records. That's all. Reassigned the file, changed the names. The baby went to his biological aunt to raise. All legal. Just rearranged. The money was to ensure I never unrearranged it. I need proof. You need to leave me alone." But she stood, disappeared into another room. When she returned, she handed me a single folded paper. "This is all I kept. Insurance, I guess. Now please, I have a life here, a real job. I don't want to go back to that night." In my car, I unfolded the paper with trembling hands. It was a copy of the original birth certificate, the one that should have been in Bed 14's file. Mother, Emma Chen, deceased. Father, Donald Marcus Whitaker. And the baby's name, the same as a young man who'd just turned 18 in Caldera Springs, living with the woman he called mother, but who was really his aunt. The photo in the silver frame wasn't just evidence of Don's infidelity. It was proof of a deleted life, a erased death, a childhood built on a $180,000 foundation of lies. And I had the receipts. The Whitaker estate glowed with warm light that evening. Preparation for the foundation's 10th anniversary gathering in full swing. Caterers arranged silver platters while my mother directed the placement of orchid centerpieces with surgical precision. I moved through the familiar rooms, my mind still processing Alyssa's revelations. In the study, that damned photo sat on the shelf where I'd first found it, moved from storage to display like Don was daring me to touch it again. The baby's peaceful face seemed to watch me through the glass. I couldn't help myself. I picked it up. The frame was heavier than I remembered, cool silver against my palms. I turned it over, studying the code that had started everything, lost in thought about the money trail, the covered-up birth, the web of lies that— "What the hell do you think you're doing?" Don's voice cracked like a whip. Before I could turn, his hand shot out, grabbing my wrist hard enough to grind the bones together. The frame flew from my grip as he yanked me sideways. "I told you to leave it alone." My hip slammed into the desk corner. Pain bloomed hot and sharp as I stumbled, catching myself against the bookshelf. Don's face was purple with rage, spittle flying as he advanced. "You stupid, ungrateful—" He shoved me back. My phone skittered across the hardwood as I went down, my cheek catching the edge of the coffee table. The copper taste of blood filled my mouth where my teeth had cut the inside of my lip. "Don, stop!" Lana, the housekeeper, burst through the doorway. "Mr. Whitaker, please." He stood over me, chest heaving, fists clenched. "You dig up that photo one more time. You try to start something with this. I swear to God, Lauren, I will end you. You understanding me? Everything you have, everything you are, I'll destroy it all." I touched my face. My fingers came away red. "The cameras," Lana whispered, and Don's expression shifted. He'd forgotten about the security system, the one Bryce had begged for after a break-in down the street, the one I'd helped configure with my tech background. "Get out," he snarled. "Get out of my house." I struggled to my feet, Lana's gentle hands helping me stand. My phone had slid under the armchair. As I retrieved it, I noticed the doorbell camera's LED blinking steadily. The living room's smart hub would have captured audio too. Bryce had wanted the full package, integration with everything. In the bathroom, Lana helped me clean my face. The cut on my lip was small but bloody. A bruise was already forming along my cheekbone. "You need to report this," she whispered, dabbing at the cut with a warm cloth. "Did you see everything?" She nodded. From the hallway. I heard shouting and came running.
Would you testify to that?
Her hands stilled. Fear flickered in her eyes. She needed this job. But then she looked at my face again, at the blood on the washcloth. Yes, if you need me to. I left through the side entrance, my mother's voice carrying from the dining room, still fussing over flower arrangements, oblivious to what had just happened in her perfect home. Or maybe not oblivious, maybe just committed to not seeing. In my car, I immediately accessed the Whitaker security system through the app. Bryce had given me admin privileges months ago when he couldn't figure out the settings. My fingers shook as I downloaded the last hour of footage from multiple cameras. The doorbell cam had caught Don grabbing me. The throw against the desk. The living room microphone had captured every word, including his threat. You dig up that photo one more time, I'll destroy it all. I backed up everything to 3 different cloud services, then sent copies to my personal lawyer with a brief explanation. Evidence Preservation 101. Learned that from a risk management seminar Don himself had paid for. Ironic. At home. I stood before my bathroom mirror, cataloging injuries. The bruise was darkening. My lips swollen. I took photos from multiple angles, then drove to the urgent care clinic on Riverside. The doctor, a young woman with kind eyes, documented everything carefully when I told her how it happened. Do you want to file a police report? She asked gently. Not yet, I said, but I need the medical records, official documentation. She nodded, understanding. I'll make sure everything is thoroughly recorded. Photos, measurements, detailed notes, whatever you need. As she worked, I thought about that baby in the photo, about Don's explosion of violence over a simple silver frame. He wasn't just protecting a secret, he was protecting an empire built on lies. The foundation, his reputation, the careful architecture of his public persona. But he'd made a crucial mistake. He'd shown his hand, revealed how desperately he needed that secret buried, and he'd done it on camera, with witnesses, leaving me with a split lip and evidence spreading across secure servers like wildfire. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. This is Alyssa. I heard what happened. If you're building a case, I'll testify. He can't hurt me anymore. I didn't know how she'd heard so quickly, but Caldera Springs was a small city in many ways. Word traveled through the hospital network like blood through veins. I replied, Thank you. Keep the documents safe. Because Don Whitaker had just taught me another lesson. When powerful men resort to violence, it means you're close to something they can't afford to lose. And I was very, very close. The photo was just the beginning. The money trail was the map. But his fist connecting with my face? That was the confirmation that I was right about everything. And now I had the bruises to prove it. The bruise on my face had faded to yellow-green by the time I sat across from Ava Prescott in her law office, but the evidence it represented had only grown stronger. Ava, my closest friend since our undergraduate days, had traded her corporate law track for labor rights, but she still knew how to follow money like a bloodhound. Jesus, Lauren, she said, studying the foundation's financial records I'd compiled. This is systematic. Look at the patterns. She was right. Once we knew what to look for, the $180,000 payment to Alyssa Hart was just the tip of the iceberg. The Whitaker for Little Hearts Foundation had a special discretionary fund, $2.4 million designated for extraordinary circumstances that Don could approve without board oversight. It's designed for emergency medical interventions, I explained. When a family can't afford critical NICU care, Don swoops in like a hero. Except, Ava prompted. Except only about half of these allocations have corresponding patient records. The rest? I pulled up another spreadsheet. The money goes out, but the paper trail stops cold. We spent hours mapping the financial web. Shell vendors, consulting fees to companies that existed only on paper, speaking honorariums for events that never happened, all funneling back to accounts Don controlled, hidden beneath layers of charitable purpose. The $180,000 to Alyssa was personal, Ava concluded. But once he realized how easy it was to move foundation money without scrutiny, he couldn't stop, I finished. That evening, I drove to Westbridge again. Alyssa had agreed to meet at a coffee shop, public and safe. She looked nervous but determined, clutching a manila envelope. "After you left, I remembered something," she began. "The night Don came to the hospital, he wasn't alone. There was a lawyer with him, Marcus Webb. He handled the paperwork for the baby's placement." She slid the envelope across the table. Inside were photocopies of documents she'd made that night, insurance against future threats, placement papers, showing the baby going to his biological aunt, medical records confirming the mother's death from complications, and at the bottom, Don's signature authorizing it all. "There's more," Alyssa said quietly. "The young woman who died, Emma. She was a nursing student at Arkvale, 19 years old. She'd been in the Foundation's scholarship program." My stomach turned. He was her benefactor? "Her mentor, that's what they called it." Alyssa's voice was bitter. She had no family except a sister, no one to ask questions when Don arranged everything. I thought of that baby in the photo. Now an 18-year-old who probably had no idea his entire life was built on his mother's erasure and his father's lies. "Do you know where the son is now?" I asked. Alyssa nodded slowly. "His name is Ryan Morrison, his aunt's married name. He just started at Caldera Springs Community College, pre-med, ironically, wants to be a pediatric surgeon. Like his father pretends to support through charity," I muttered. "Lauren," Alyssa leaned forward, "be careful how you use this. That boy doesn't know. He thinks his aunt is his mother, thinks his real mother died in a car accident when he was 3. Don't destroy his life to get revenge on his father." She was right. Ryan Morrison was innocent in all this. A child who'd lost his mother before he could form a memory of her face. Whatever I did next had to protect him while exposing Don. Back in Caldera Springs, I met with Thomas Reed, a forensic accountant who'd worked with the state attorney general's office before going private. Ava had recommended him for his discretion and thoroughness. "This is going to take time to build properly," he warned after reviewing my preliminary findings. "But from what I can see, we're looking at massive fraud. The IRS will be very interested, not to mention the State Charity Commission." "How long do we need?" "To make it airtight? 3 months minimum. But if you want to move faster..." "There's a gala in 2 weeks," I said. "The Foundation's 10-year anniversary. Every major donor will be there, plus media coverage." Thomas and Ava exchanged glances. "That's risky," Ava said. "Very public." "Don made it public when he put his hands on me," I replied, touching the faded bruise on my cheek. "He's going to stand up there and talk about transparency, about saving children's lives, all while sitting on a $2.4 million slush fund he's been skimming." "What about the boy?" Thomas asked. "Ryan?" I'd been thinking about that constantly. "We leave his name out of it. Focus on the financial crimes, not the personal ones. The birth certificate stays sealed unless absolutely necessary for prosecution." But I would invite him to the gala, him and his aunt, let them sit in that room while Don performed his charity theater, knowing that his biological son was watching, not to hurt Ryan, but to ensure Don understood the weight of his choices. "You'll need more than financial records," Thomas warned. "Juries like documents, but they love stories. You need witnesses." I thought of Lana, who'd seen Don attack me, of Alyssa, who'd altered records under threat, of the security footage showing Don's violence over a simple photograph. "I'll get them," I promised. The photo that started everything sat in my apartment now, safely removed from Don's reach. That baby's peaceful face, the distinctive birthmark that marked him as Don's blood, it had unlocked a cascade of crimes that went far beyond one night's deception. Don Whitaker had built an empire on other people's generosity, skimming from funds meant for the most vulnerable. He'd erased a young woman's existence, hidden his son, and thought his money could buy permanent silence. But he'd made one crucial error. He'd assumed I was just the difficult stepdaughter, asking inconvenient questions out of spite. He'd never imagined I was building a case that would bring down everything he'd built. Brick by documented brick, the Silver Key Hotel ballroom sparkled with calculated elegance, crystal chandeliers casting prismatic light over Caldera Springs' philanthropic elite. I stood at the edge of the cocktail reception, watching Don work the room with practiced charm, his silver hair gleaming, his smile never wavering. 2 weeks of meticulous preparation had led to this moment. Every piece was in place. Nervous? Ava appeared at my elbow, stunning in a midnight blue gown that concealed the recording device in her clutch. Terrified, I admitted, smoothing my own dress, carefully chosen to hide the wire taped to my ribs. Across the room, Detective Patricia Morse of the Financial Crimes Division mingled with guests, her cover as a potential donor thoroughly backstopped. 3 more undercover officers were scattered throughout the venue. The district attorney himself waited in an unmarked van outside, ready to move on our signal. "Table assignments are confirmed," Thomas Reed murmured, joining us. "Your special guests are at table 12, as requested." I glanced toward the far corner where Alyssa Hart sat rigid with anxiety, her husband's protective hand on her shoulder. 3 seats away, Ryan Morrison laughed at something his aunt, the woman he called mother, had said. He looked heartbreakingly young in his rented tuxedo, unaware that his presence here was part of a larger design. The code name we'd chosen for tonight was Orchid 07, a reference to the NICU bed that had been scrubbed from existence, to the October 2007 date that had changed everything. "Ladies and gentlemen," the MC's voice boomed, "please take your seats for dinner and our special program." I moved to the Arkvale Children's Health table, positioned strategically near the stage. My mother sat 2 tables away, resplendent in champagne silk, playing the perfect political wife. She'd called 3 times this week, leaving messages about family loyalty and not making scenes. I'd ignored them all. Don took the stage as appetizers were served, launching into his well-rehearsed speech about the Foundation's decade of service. Charts appeared on the screen behind him, showing lives saved, families helped, millions raised. "Transparency," he declared, "has always been our watchword. Every dollar tracked, every child counted." I caught Detective Morse's eye. She nodded slightly. The program proceeded with testimonials from grateful families, a video montage of smiling children, all building to Don's announcement of the new NICU expansion. He stood at the podium like a king surveying his kingdom, confident in his control. "And now," the MC announced as dessert was being cleared, "we have a special presentation from our partners at Arkvale Children's Health. Please welcome their risk control coordinator, Lauren Hayes." Don's face went still. This wasn't on his program. I rose, feeling 500 eyes track my movement to the stage. The envelope in my hand felt heavier than lead. "Thank you," I began, my voice steady despite my hammering heart. "Arkvale is proud to partner with the Whitaker Foundation. In fact, we've prepared a special case study tonight, a detailed look at how charitable funds can change lives in unexpected ways." Don's jaw tightened. He started to rise, but Thomas Reed appeared at his shoulder, whispering something that made him sink back down. "Let me share the story of allocation Orchid 07, I continued. The reaction was immediate. Alyssa's sharp intake of breath carried across the silent room. Don's face drained of color. At table 12, Ryan Morrison looked confused but intrigued. I opened the envelope with deliberate precision. October 2007. A young nursing student named Emma Reeves. I used her real name, not the one from the falsified documents. Gave birth via emergency cesarean at Arkvale. Complications arose. The mother tragically passed away, leaving behind a newborn son. On the screen behind me, the baby's photo appeared. The same one Don had attacked me for touching, magnified 30 feet high. The birthmark near the left ear was unmistakable. The father, concerned about the child's future, authorized a special allocation from the foundation, $180,000, coded as extraordinary circumstances, but this payment wasn't for medical care. I clicked to the next slide. Canceled checks, wire transfers, account records. These funds went to Alyssa Hart, a NICU coordinator, in exchange for altering hospital records, for erasing Emma Reeves from the system, for reassigning her baby to another family member as if the birth had never happened. Gasps rippled through the room. Camera phones appeared despite the no photography request. Local news crews, invited to cover the gala's success, swung their equipment toward the unfolding drama. "Ms. Hayes," the MC stammered, "I don't think—" "Code Orchid 07, I said clearly. It was the signal. Detective Morse stood, badge flashing. "Donald Whitaker, you're under arrest for fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy. Please stand and place your hands behind your back." The ballroom erupted. Chairs scraped. Voices rose. Cameras captured everything as uniformed officers entered from service doors. Don tried to run, but Thomas Reed, revealed now as working with the investigation, blocked his path. "This is ridiculous," Don shouted as handcuffs clicked around his wrists. "That money was for charity. Every cent accounted for." "Actually," I said into the microphone, my voice cutting through the chaos, $2.4 million is unaccounted for, hidden in shell companies, false invoices, phantom programs. We have the receipts. I clicked through more slides. The full scope of Don's embezzlement laid bare in spreadsheets and bank records. The crowd fell silent again, watching their philanthropic hero crumble in real time. But I wasn't done. The final slide showed the security footage from Don's house, the moment his fist connected with my face over that simple photograph. "Some secrets," I said quietly, "are worth more than money. Some are worth violence to protect. But in the end, the truth has its own value." As officers led Don toward the exit, he passed table 12. Ryan Morrison stood frozen, his face a study in dawning recognition as he stared at the massive photo still on screen, at the birthmark that matched the one he'd seen in every mirror his whole life. I locked eyes with him for just a moment, trying to convey an apology for the brutal way he was learning his history. Then I turned back to the microphone for one final statement. The Whitaker Foundation for Little Hearts was built on a lie that cost a young mother her identity and her son his history. It was funded by theft disguised as charity. Arkvale Children's Health will be establishing a new fund, the Emma Reeves Memorial Fund, to support young mothers in crisis. We hope you'll consider redirecting your generosity there. I stepped down from the stage into a tsunami of questions, cameras, and chaos. My mother sat frozen at her table, her perfect world shattered. Bryce was already on his phone, probably calling our lawyer. But at table 12, I saw Ryan Morrison embracing the woman he'd called mother his whole life, both of them crying. Alyssa Hart watched with tears streaming down her face, tears of relief, maybe, that the secret she'd carried was finally in the light. The gala that was supposed to celebrate 10 years of Don Whitaker's charitable legacy had become its funeral, and the baby in the photograph, no longer erased, no longer hidden, had finally been acknowledged. Even if the cost was everything, the ballroom descended into controlled chaos. Detective Morse held Dawn near the service exit while her team secured evidence, but the MC, a veteran of countless charity events, somehow maintained his composure at the podium. "Ladies and gentlemen, please," he called out. "If everyone could remain seated for just a moment." That's when I played my final card. "Actually," I said, returning to the microphone, "there's one more piece of evidence that needs to be presented. May I?" The MC, overwhelmed, simply stepped aside. I produced a USB drive, handing it to the AV technician. "This contains audio from the night Mr. Whitaker assaulted me in his home. I think everyone should hear exactly what kind of man they've been supporting." The speakers crackled to life. Don's voice, crystal clear and venomous, filled the ballroom. "You dig up that photo one more time. You try to start something with this. I swear to God. Lauren, I will end you. You understanding me? Everything you have, everything you are, I'll destroy it all." The sound of impact, my gasp of pain, Lana's pleading voice. 500 of Caldera Springs' most influential citizens sat in stunned silence. listening to their golden boy reveal his true nature. The news cameras captured every second. "Mr. Whitaker," a reporter shouted, breaking the spell. "Do you deny these charges?" Don's face contorted with rage. Even in handcuffs, he commanded attention. "This is a setup, a vindictive stepdaughter trying to destroy—" "Code Orchid 07, I repeated into the microphone. It was the second signal. Thomas Reed stepped forward, pulling out a folder. "Mr. Whitaker, I'm Special Agent Reed with the FBI Financial Crimes Division. We've been investigating your foundation for 6 months based on Ms. Hayes' initial findings. You're facing federal charges in addition to state." The revelation sent another shockwave through the crowd. I'd kept that detail even from Ava. The FBI's involvement had been strictly need to know. But the evening's drama wasn't over. From table 12, someone stood, Ryan Morrison. His young face streaked with tears but set with determination, walked toward the stage. "May I?" he asked quietly, gesturing to the microphone. I stepped aside, my heart breaking for him. "My name is Ryan Morrison," he began, his voice shaking but clear. "Until 10 minutes ago, I thought I knew who I was. I thought my mother died in a car accident when I was 3. I thought—" He paused, looking directly at Dawn. "I have the same birthmark, the same one that baby has, the same one you have." His voice gained strength. "You're my father, aren't you? And my real mother, Emma, she died giving birth to me." The ballroom held its collective breath. 18 years, Ryan continued. 18 years of lies, of thinking I was orphaned by accident instead of abandoned by choice, of watching you on TV, talking about helping children, never knowing you threw away your own son like trash. "Ryan," Don started. "Don't." The young man's voice cracked like a whip. "Don't you dare say my name. You paid $180,000 to erase me, to pretend I never existed. What kind of man does that to his own child?" My mother finally found her voice. "This is absurd. Donald would never—" "The DNA test results are in the sealed envelope Detective Morse is holding," I announced. "Collected from the glass Don was drinking from tonight, compared to a sample Ryan voluntarily provided this week, 99.97% probability of paternity." Marjorie Whitaker sank back into her chair like a deflated balloon. The MC, recognizing the complete destruction of the evening's purpose, made one last attempt at control. "Perhaps we should—" "Read the number," Ryan interrupted, pointing at the donation thermometer displayed on stage. "Read how much money this man has raised for the children. $8.6 million over 10 years, the MC stammered. "And how much of that actually went to kids like me?" Ryan's voice was steel now. "Kids whose mothers died scared and alone? Kids whose fathers had enough money to make them disappear?" The silence was deafening. Agent Reed cleared his throat. "Our audit indicates approximately $4.2 million in legitimate charitable disbursements. The rest was diverted through various schemes. We have frozen all foundation assets as of this evening." Board members at the front tables were frantically making phone calls. Major donors looked ill. The carefully constructed world of Whitaker philanthropy was collapsing in real time. "There's something else," Alyssa Hart said, standing at her table. Her voice carried despite its softness. "The young woman who died, Emma, she wasn't just some random student. She was brilliant, top of her nursing class. She wanted to work in pediatric oncology, to help sick children. She looked directly at Dawn. You stole that from the world. You stole her future, her dreams, her life's work, all because you couldn't keep your pants zipped and couldn't face the consequences." "Enough!" Dawn roared, struggling against his restraints. "You don't understand. The foundation, my work, it's helped thousands. One mistake doesn't erase." "One mistake?" I laughed, the sound sharp in the hushed room. "Should we go through the itemized list? The shell companies? The phantom vendors? The speaking fees for non-existent conferences? Or should we talk about how you've been skimming from dying children to fund your lake house renovations?" I clicked to a new slide showing contractor invoices paid by Foundation emergency funds. Marble countertops, I read. Italian tile, a wine cellar, all urgent medical necessities, I'm sure. The news crews were having a field day. Tomorrow's headlines wrote themselves, Charity Kings Fall from Grace, or Foundation Built on Lies Crumbles in Scandal. But I saved the final blow for last. The Emma Reeves Memorial Fund will launch tomorrow, I announced. Chaired by her sister, Catherine Morrison, who raised Emma's son as her own, every dollar will be independently audited. No hidden accounts, no disappeared children, just help for young mothers who need it. Catherine Morrison stood at table 12, dignified despite her tears. She nodded once, acknowledging her new role. As the officers finally led Don away, he passed his son one more time. Ryan stepped directly into his path. I'm going to be a doctor, Ryan said quietly. Like my mother wanted to be. I'm going to save the kids you pretended to care about, and every life I save, every child I help. That's her legacy. Not yours, never yours. Don's face crumbled. For the first time all evening, he had no words. The ballroom erupted as he disappeared through the service door. Reporters rushed the stage. Donors demanded answers. Board members fled. But at the epicenter of the chaos, I stood calm. The photo that had started everything still glowed on the screen behind me. A baby whose existence had been denied, whose mother had been erased, whose father had built an empire on their graves. Now everyone knew the truth. The empire was ashes. The baby had a name. And the man who'd raised his fist to keep it all secret was heading to federal prison. Justice, served cold at a charity gala, with 500 witnesses and a dozen news cameras to ensure it could never be buried again. The service exit doors burst open as officers escorted Don toward the waiting police vehicles. Camera flashes exploded like fireworks, reporters surging forward with a tsunami of questions. But the real avalanche was just beginning inside the ballroom. Ladies and gentlemen, Agent Reed commanded the microphone, his federal authority cutting through the chaos. This is now an active crime scene. We need everyone to remain seated while we process evidence. Board members frantically whispered with their lawyers on phones. Major donors sat frozen, calculating their exposure. At the Whitaker table, my mother remained statue still, her perfect world shattered like the champagne flute she'd dropped. The forensic audit is comprehensive, Reed continued, producing a thick folder. Every transaction over $10,000 from the past decade has been examined. We'll be contacting many of you regarding donations that were diverted from their stated purpose. A wave of panic rippled through the crowd. Several people tried to leave, only to be turned back by officers at the exits. Catherine Morrison approached the stage, Ryan at her side. The woman who'd raised her sister's child as her own carried herself with quiet dignity despite the tears on her cheeks. May I speak? She asked me softly. I handed her the microphone, stepping back. My sister Emma was 19 years old, Catherine began, her voice steady. She was brilliant, kind, and trusted the wrong man. When she found out she was pregnant, she came to me terrified, not of having a baby. She already loved Ryan before he was born. She was terrified of him. She pointed toward the exit where Don had disappeared. He threatened to destroy her career, to ensure she'd never work in medicine. He offered her money to go away. She refused. She wanted her baby to know his father. Foolish girl, Catherine's voice cracked. The emergency cesarean wasn't supposed to be dangerous, but complications arose, hemorrhaging. By the time they got it under control, Ryan wrapped his arm around the woman he'd called mother his whole life. She died alone, Catherine continued, because he had already convinced the staff to keep her situation quiet. No visitors logged, no records of him being there. Just a 19-year-old girl dying while the father of her child arranged to erase her existence. Alyssa Hart stood at her table, raising her hand. I was there. I held her hand at the end. She made me promise to make sure her baby was safe. I failed her by letting him alter the records. I've lived with that guilt for 18 years. You kept me safe, Ryan said firmly. You made sure I went to family, not strangers. That's what she wanted. The human moment cut through the legal proceedings. Real grief, real loss, real consequences to Dawn's actions beyond the financial crimes. There's more, I announced, returning to the microphone. The investigation uncovered 17 other extraordinary circumstances payments over the years, not all involving children, but all involving people Dawn needed to silence or control. Agent Reed nodded. We're requesting anyone who received unusual payments from the Foundation to come forward. Immunity may be available for cooperation. 3 people immediately stood and approached the federal agents. Then 5 more. Within minutes, a line had formed. Former employees, contractors, even a city councilman who'd questioned the Foundation's tax exemptions before suddenly dropping the matter. This is insane, Marjorie finally exploded, finding her voice. You're destroying a decade of charitable work over massive fraud. Mom, I faced her across the chaos. Over embezzlement? Over what he did to that girl? Or over what he did to me when I tried to expose it? The bruises had faded, but the memory hadn't. The security footage still played on loop behind us, Dawn's violence captured in high definition. He's your father, she shrieked. He gave you everything. He's not my father, I said calmly. He's a criminal who happened to marry my mother, and everything he gave came with a price tag I'm no longer willing to pay. Bryce appeared at her side, his face pale but determined. Mom, stop. Just stop. Lauren's right. I've been looking at the Foundation's books myself since last week. It's all there. Every transaction she claimed, every shell company, every lie. The betrayal from her golden son hit Marjorie harder than anything else. She sank into her chair, aging a decade in moments. The MC, still somehow at his post, cleared his throat. Given the circumstances, the board has asked me to announce that the Whitaker Foundation for Little Hearts is suspending all operations effective immediately. All pending grants are frozen pending federal review. Cries of alarm rose from legitimate recipients in the audience. Small clinics, family support programs, actual children's services that relied on foundation funding. Arkvale Children's Health will be establishing an emergency bridge fund, I announced quickly. Any verified recipient can apply starting tomorrow. We won't let the real charitable work suffer because of one man's crimes. It was a promise I'd have to fight to keep, but the relief on some faces made it worthwhile. A commotion at the main entrance drew attention. Don was being brought back in, the prosecutors apparently wanting him present for the formal federal charges. He looked smaller somehow, his silver hair mussed, his perfect suit wrinkled. Donald Marcus Whitaker, Agent Reed announced formally. You're under arrest for wire fraud, money laundering, tax evasion, and conspiracy to commit fraud. Additional charges may follow as the investigation continues. Wait, Ryan Morrison called out. I have something to say to him. The room fell silent as the young man approached his biological father. They stood face to face, the abandoned son and the man who'd paid to erase him. I'm going to medical school, Ryan said quietly. Just got accepted to state. Full scholarship, academic, not bought. I'm going to be everything my mother wanted to be. And when I save lives, when I help children, it'll be her name they thank. Emma Reeves, not Whitaker, never Whitaker. Don's mouth opened, closed, found no words. The Foundation's assets will be liquidated, Reed announced. Estimated recovery is $2.4 million in hidden funds, plus properties and investments purchased with embezzled money. These will be redistributed to legitimate charitable purposes under court supervision. No! Don finally found his voice. That foundation is my legacy. 10 years of work. Your legacy, I said clearly, is a young woman dead at 19, a son denied his history, millions stolen from dying children, and a stepdaughter with security footage of you committing assault. I clicked to the final slide, a photo of Emma Reeves from her nursing school ID, young, bright-eyed, full of promise that would never be fulfilled. This is who we should remember tonight, I said, not the man who killed her dreams, but the woman who died loving a child she'd never get to raise. The Emma Reeves Memorial Fund will ensure her name lives on in the work she dreamed of doing. The room erupted again as officers led Dawn away for the final time. But now the chaos had a different quality. Not just scandal and shock, but a reckoning. Truth burning through a decade of carefully constructed lies. At the center of it all, that baby photo still glowed on the screen. No longer hidden, no longer denied. A child whose existence had toppled an empire built on his erasure. The avalanche was complete. The foundation was rubble. And somewhere in federal booking, a man who'd built his reputation on charity would be trading his tuxedo for an orange jumpsuit. The baby in the silver frame had finally gotten justice. Even if it took 18 years and a bruised stepdaughter to deliver it, the federal marshals secured Don's hands behind his back with a finality that echoed through the ballroom. The sterling silver cufflinks he'd worn, a gift from the Foundation's 5th anniversary, caught the light one last time before disappearing behind his back. "Donald Whitaker," the lead marshal announced. "You're being transferred to federal custody pending arraignment." The man who'd commanded every room he entered for a decade couldn't even lift his head. The weight of his exposed crimes pressed down like a physical force, crushing the carefully constructed persona until only the criminal remained. I stood at the podium, watching the finale of everything I'd set in motion. Around me, the ballroom churned with activity. FBI agents collecting documents, reporters broadcasting live updates, donors demanding answers from anyone who would listen. "The complete audit results will be made public," Agent Reed announced. "Full transparency, as Mr. Whitaker always claimed to support." The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Ryan Morrison hadn't moved from where he'd confronted Dawn. Catherine stood beside him, her hand on his shoulder, both of them processing 18 years of lies unraveling in a single night.
"Ms. Hayes," Ryan called out as I stepped down from the stage. "Thank you. For everything. For giving me back my mother's name."
"You deserve the truth," I replied simply. "You both did." The Emma Reeves Memorial Fund would launch with Catherine as chair and Ryan as its first scholarship recipient. A young woman erased would live on through every life saved by the doctors she helped train. It wasn't justice. Nothing could bring Emma back. But it was something. My mother remained at her table, abandoned by the society friends who'd already begun distancing themselves from the scandal. Bryce sat beside her, torn between family loyalty and moral clarity. "You destroyed us," she whispered when I approached. "No, Mom, Don destroyed himself. I just turned on the lights." She looked at me then, really looked at me for perhaps the first time in years. The bruise from Don's attack had faded, but she could see its ghost in the steel of my spine, the determination that had carried me through weeks of investigation. "He hit you," she said, as if just now understanding. "Over a photograph." "Over the truth," I corrected. He knew one pulled thread would unravel everything. The ballroom was emptying now, guests fleeing the wreckage of what should have been a celebration. News vans lined the street outside, their satellite dishes reaching toward the night sky, beaming the scandal across the state. By morning, it would be nationwide. The charity king exposed as a common thief, the millionaire who stole from dying children, the father who paid to erase his own son. Lauren, Lana, the housekeeper who'd witnessed Don's violence, approached with tears in her eyes. "I'm proud of you. It took courage to stand up there, to face him down." "It took all of us," I said, meaning it. "You, Alyssa, Agent Reed, everyone who chose truth over comfort." The last image on the screen behind me was still Emma's nursing school photo. Young, hopeful, unaware that her kindness would be repaid with erasure, but she wasn't erased anymore. Her name would live on every scholarship, every saved life, every child who got the medical care Don had pretended to provide. "Ma'am," a federal agent approached, "we need you to come to the office tomorrow. Final statements, evidence authentication." I nodded. The work wasn't done. Trials would follow. Testimonies would be given. Justice would grind slowly but inevitably toward Don's complete destruction. But tonight, Tonight the avalanche had fallen. The foundation built on lies had crumbled. The baby in the silver frame had his name back, his history restored, his existence acknowledged. As I left the Silver Key Hotel, I passed the spot where Dawn had been loaded into the federal vehicle. Only a few reporters remained, their stories already filed, the scandal packaged for morning consumption. I thought about that photo, sitting safely in my apartment. Such a small thing, a moment captured in silver and glass, but it had been enough to bring down an empire, to restore a stolen identity, to prove that sometimes the truth really is stronger than money. Don Whitaker had taught me many lessons over the years: how to spot financial irregularities, how to trace hidden money, how to build a case that would stand up in federal court. But the most important lesson was one he never intended: that every lie, no matter how deeply buried, leaves evidence. Every crime, no matter how well funded, creates victims who remember. Every tyrant, no matter how powerful, can fall to someone willing to pick up a photograph and ask why it matters so much. The bruise on my cheek had healed. The foundation was destroyed. The man who'd raised his fist to silence me was heading to federal prison. And somewhere in Caldera Springs, an 18-year-old named Ryan Morrison was learning his real mother's name, preparing to carry her dreams forward into a future she'd never see but had died believing in. That was justice. Not perfect, not complete, but real. The baby in the photograph finally had his story told, and the man who'd tried to erase him had lost everything in the telling. Thank you for listening to this story of truth emerging from buried secrets. I'd love to know where you're listening from. Drop a comment and let's connect across the miles. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts below. What would you have done in Lauren's position? Your perspectives make these stories come alive.